So, it's nerve-wracking, but it is exciting and scary and all kinds of things at the same time, you know. So, hopefully today's chapters, we're going to read at least 10 and 11, and depending on how we go, we might just keep going, because I have nothing on the books today. So we're going to read what we can and go from there. And don't hesitate to, chat and say, hey, how are you? Or, tell me where you're from, or just whether or not you like the reading, and if you've read the book before, or if you love Stephen King, or if you have another author you want us to read about, whatever. Don't be afraid to interact. Really don't. It's really nice to know that people just watch. I mean, at some points I've had 14 people watch, and there's only 2 that have followed, and I'm like, but if you follow, you at least know when I'm, going to be reading, but that's okay. It's not a big deal to me. I love when people follow me because they will know when I'm reading. But at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and beg, follow me, hit that follow button, hit that subscribe, blah, blah, blah. No, that's just not me. I don't do this because I want to gain money. I don't do this because I want followers. I do this because I love to read. And in the last couple months, I have been able to get back into my reading, and I love it. So, okay, it's now hot in here. So this is going to be fun to me, I think. At least it is to me. I love it. Now, let's see. What else is going on today? Probably nothing. So, shall we start? We are reading Bag of Bones. And I should still keep on introducing myself. I am Lady Rain. I love to read, and a friend of mine actually helped me with that name, and it just has stuck. So, where we left off last night was this. We had the memo scriber, and he went to bed with it at 000, and he woke up with it at 012. And what he heard was this. Oh, Mike, a whispered voice mourned almost. Oh, Mike, on the tape. And if I found myself having to press the heel of my hand to my mouth to hold back a scream. It was what I had heard in Joe's office when the draft rushed past the sides of my face. Only now the words were slowed down just enough for me to understand. Oh, Mike, it said again. There was a faint click. The machine had shut down for a length of time, and then once more spoken in the living room as I had slept in the north wing. Oh, Mike. And if you can imagine, I can't do it, but if you can imagine a ghost saying that, and then it was gone. It gave me as they call goose flesh, goose pimples, goose bumps. Yes. So we're on to chapter 10 today. Around 9 o'clock, a pickup came down the driveway and parked behind my Chevrolet. The truck was new, a Dodge Ram, so clean and chrome shiny it looked as if the 10-day plates had just come off that morning. But it was the same shade of off-white as the last one, and the sign on the driver's door was the one I remembered. William Bill Dean, camp checking, caretaker, light carpentry, plus his telephone number. I went out on the back stoop to meet him, coffee cup in my hand. Mike! Bill cried, climbing down from behind the wheel. Yankee men don't hug. That's the truism you can put right up there with tough guys don't dance and real men don't eat quiche. But Bill pumped his hand almost hard enough to slop coffee from the cup that was 3/4 empty and gave me a hearty clap on the back. His grin revealed a splendidly blatant set of false teeth, the kind which used to be called Roebuckers, because you get them from the catalog. It occurred to me in passing that my ancient interlocutor from the Lakeview General Store could have used a pair. It certainly would have improved meal times for the noisy old fuck. Mike, you are a sight for sore eyes. Good to see you too, I said, grinning. Nor was it a false grin. I felt all right. Things with the power to scare the living shit out of you on a thundery midnight, in most cases, seem only interesting in the bright light of the summer morning. You're looking well, my friend. It was true. Bill was 4 years older and a little grayer around the edges, but otherwise the same. 65, 70, it didn't matter. There was no waxy look of ill health about him, and none of the falling away in the face, primarily around the eyes and in the cheeks, that I associate with encrouching infirmity. So are you, he said, letting go of my hand. Well, we was all so sorry about Joe, Mike. Folks in town thought the world of her. It was a shock, with her so young. My wife asked if I'd give you some condolences special. Joe made her an Afghan the year she had the pneumonia, and Yvette ain't never forgot it. Thanks, I said, and my voice wasn't quite my own for a moment or two. It seemed that on the TR my wife was hardly dead at all. And thank Yvette, too. Yeah, everything okay with the house, other than the air conditioner, buggeredly thing. Them at the Western Auto promised me that part last week, and now they're saying maybe not till August 1st. It's okay. I got my power book. If I want to use it, the kitchen table will be fine for the desk. And I would want to use it. So many crosswords, so little time. Got your hot water okay? All that's fine. But there's one problem. I stopped. How did you tell your caretaker you thought your house was haunted? Probably there was no good way. Probably the best thing to do was to do it head on. I had questions, but I didn't want just to nibble around the edges of the subject and be coy. For one thing, Bill would sense it. He might have bought his false teeth out of the catalog, but he wasn't stupid. It's on your mind, Mike, shoot. I don't know how you're going to take this, but he smiled in the way of a man who suddenly understands and held up his hand. Yes, maybe I know already. You do? I felt an enormous sense of relief, and I could hardly wait to find out what he had experienced in Sara. Perhaps while checking for dead light bulbs or making sure the roof was holding the snow all right. What did you hear? Mostly what Royce Merrill and Dickie Brooks have been tellin', he said. Beyond that, I don't know much. Me and my mother's only got back last night around 8 o'clock. Still, it's a big topic down to the store. For a moment I remained so fixed on Sara Laughs that I had no idea what he was talking about. All I could think of was that the folks were gossiping about the strange noises in my house. Then the Royce Merrill clicked, and everything else clicked with it. Merrill was an elderly possum with a gold-headed cane and salacious wink. Old 4 teeth. My caretaker wasn't talking about ghostly noises. He was talking about Matty Board. Let's get you a cup of coffee, I said. I need to tell you what I'm stepping in here. We were seated on the deck, me with fresh coffee and Bill with a cup of tea. Coffee burns me, he said. I asked him first to tell me the Royce Merrill, Dickie Brooks version of my encounter with Maddie and Kira. It turned out to be better than I expected. Both old men had seen me standing on the side of the road with the little girl in my arms, and they had observed my Chevy parked halfway into the ditch with the driver's side door open. But apparently neither of them had seen Kira using the white line on Route 68 as a tightrope. As if to compensate for this, however, Royce claimed that Maddie had given me a big my hero hug and kiss on the mouth. Did he get that part about how I grabbed her by the ass and slipped her some tongue? Did he get the part? I asked. Bill grinned. Royce's imagination ain't stretched that far since he was 50 or so, and that was 40 or more years ago. I never touched her. Well, there had been the moment when the back of my hand had sliding along the curve of her breast, but that had been inadvertent. Whatever the young lady herself might think about it. Shite. You don't need to tell me that, he said, but. He said that but the way mothers always had, letting it trail off on its own, like the tail of some ill-omened kite. But what? You do well to keep your distance from her, he said. She's nice enough. Almost a town girl, don't you know? But she's trouble, he paused. No, that ain't quite fair to her. She's in trouble. The old man wants custody of the baby, doesn't he? Bill set his teacup down on the deck rail and looked at me with his eyebrows raised. Reflections from the lake ran up his cheek in ripples, giving him an exotic look. How'd you know? Guesswork, but of the educated variety. Her father-in-law called me Saturday night during the fireworks, and while he never came outright and stated his purpose, I doubt if Max DeVore came all the way back to TR-90 in western Maine to repo his daughter-in-law's Jeep and trailer. So what's the story, Bill? For several moments he only looked at me. It was almost the look of a man who knows you have contracted a serious disease and isn't sure he how much he ought to tell you. Being looked at that way made me profoundly uneasy. It also made me feel that I might be putting Bill Dean on the spot. DeVore had roots here, after all, and as much as Bill might like me, I didn't. Joe and I were from away. It could have been worse. It could have been Massachusetts or New York, but Derry, although in Maine, was still away. Bill, I could use a little navigational help if you want to stay out of his way, he said. His smile was gone. His easy smile was gone. The man's mad. For a moment, I thought Bill only meant DeVore was pissed off at me. And then I took another look at his face. No, I decided he didn't mean pissed off. He had used the word mad in the most literal way. Mad how, I asked. Mad like Charles Manson, like Hannibal Lecter, how? Say like Howard Hughes, he said. Ever read any of the stories about him? The lengths he'd go to get the things he wanted. It didn't matter if it was a special kind of hot dog they only sold in L.A. or an airplane designer he wanted to steal from Lockhead or McDowell Douglas. He had to have what he wanted, and he wouldn't rest until it was under his hand. DeVore's the same way. He always was. Even as a boy, he was willful, according to the stories you hear in town. My own dad had one he used to tell. He said little Max DeVore broke into Scant Larrabee's tack shed one winter because he wanted the flexible flyer Scant give his little boy Scooter for Christmas. Back around 23. Back around 23, this would have been. DeVore cut both his hands on broken glass, Dad said, but he got the sled. They found him near midnight, sliding down the Sugar Maple Hill, holding his hands up to his chest when he went down. He'd bled all over his mittens and his snowsuit. There's other stories you'll hear about Maxie DeVore as a kid. If you ask, you'll hear 50 different ones, and the same may even be true. Some may even be true. That one about the sled is true, though. I'd bet the farm on it, because my father didn't lie. It was almost his religion. Baptist? No, sir, Yankee. 23 was so many moons ago, Bill. Sometimes people change. Aye, but mostly they don't. I haven't seen DeVore since he came back and moved into Warrington's, so I can't say for sure. But I've heard things that make me think that if he has changed, it's for the worse. He didn't come all the way across the country because he wanted a vacation. He wants the kid. To him, she's just another version of Scooter Larrabee's flexible flyer. And my strong advice to you is that you don't want to be the window glass between him and her. I sipped my coffee and looked out at the lake. Bill gave me time to think, scraping one of his work boots across the splatter of bird shit on the boards while I did it. Crow shit, I reckoned. Only crows crap in such a long and exuberant splatters. One thing seemed absolutely sure. Mattie DeVore was roughly 9 miles up Shit Creek with no paddle. I'm not the cynic I was at 20. Is anyone? But I wasn't naive enough or idealistic enough to believe the law would protect Mrs. Doublewide against Mr. Computer. Not if Mr. Computer decided to play dirty. As a boy, he'd taken the sled he wanted and gone sledding by himself at midnight. Bleeding hands, not a concern. And as a man, an old man who had been getting every sled he wanted for the past 40 years or so? What's the story with Mattie, Bill? Tell me. It didn't take him long. Country stories are, by and large, simple stories. My nose itches. It's allergies. which isn't to say they're not often interesting. Maddie DeVore had started life as Maddie Stanchfield, not quite from the TR, but but from just over the line in Moton. Her father had been a longer, her mother, a logger, and her mother a home beautician, which made it, in a ghastly way, the perfect country marriage. There were 3 kids. When Dave Stanchfield missed a curve over a level and drove a fully loaded pulp truck into Cawadden Pond, his widow kind of lost heart, as they say. She died soon after. There was no insurance other than what Stanchfield had been obliged to carry on his Jimmy and his skidder. Talk about your brother's grim, huh? Subtract the Fisher Price toys behind the house and the 2 pull hair dryers in the basement beauty salon, the old rust bucket Toyota in the driveway, and you were right there. Once upon a time, there lived a poor widow and her 3 children. Maddie is the princess of the piece. Poor, but beautiful. That she was beautiful, I could personally testify. Now enter the prince. In this case, he's a gangly, stuttering redhead named Lance DeVore, a child of Max DeVore's sunset years. When Lance met Maddie, he was 21. She had just turned 17. The meeting took place at Warrington's, where Maddie had landed a summer job as a waitress. Lance DeVore was staying across the lake on the Upper Bay, but on Tuesday nights there were pickup softball games at Warrington's, the townies against the summer folks, and he usually canoed across to play. Softball is a great thing for the Lance DeVores of the world. When you're standing at the plate with the bat in your hands, it doesn't matter if you're gangly, and it sure doesn't matter if you stutter. He confused him quite considerably over to Warrington's.
Hey, Mom.
Bill said, "What?"
The bar of soap I've been using is smaller than the bar of soap I haven't used yet.
Well, yeah. Usually, that's a good one though. They didn't know which team he belonged on, the locals or their aways. Lance didn't care. Either side was fine with him. Some weeks he'd play for one, some weeks the other. Either one was more than happy to have him, too, as he could hit a ton and field like an angel. They put him at first base a lot because he was tall, but he was really wasted there. At second or shortstop, he'd jump and twirl around like that guy Noriega. You might mean Nureyev. Anyway, I said. He shrugged. Point is, he was something to see. And the folks liked him. He fit in. It's mostly young folks that play, and to them, it's how you do, not who you are. Besides, a lot of them don't know Max DeVore from a hole in the ground. Unless they read the Wall Street Journal and the computer magazines, I said. In those, you run across the name DeVore about as often as you run across the name of God in the Bible. No fooling? Well, I guess that in the computer magazines, God is more often spelled Gates. You know what I mean. But you know what I mean. I suppose. But even so, it's been 65 years since Max DeVore spent any real time on the TR. You know what happened when he left, don't you? No. Why would I? He looked at me surprised. Then a kind of veil seemed to fall over his eyes. He blinked and it cleared. Tell you another time. It ain't no secret, but I need to head over to Harriman's by 11 to check their sump pump. Don't want to get sidetracked. Point I was trying to make is this. Lance DeVore was accepted as a nice young fellow who could hit a softball 350 feet into the trees if he struck it just right. There's no end enough to hold his old man against him. There's no one old enough. Not at Warrington's on Tuesday nights, there wasn't, and no one held it against him that his family was dough, either. Hell, there were lots of wealthy people here in the summer, you know that? None worth as much as Max DeVore, but being rich is only a matter of degree. That wasn't true, and I had just enough money to know it. Wealth is like the Richter scale. Once you pass a certain point, the jumps from one level to the next aren't double or triple, but some amazing and ruinous multiple. You don't want you don't even want to think about. Fitzgerald held it straight. Although I guess he didn't believe his own sight, the very rich are different from you and me. I thought of telling Bill that and decided to keep my mouth shut. He had a sub pump to fix. Kira's parents met over a keg of beer stuck in a manhole. Maddie was running the usual Tuesday night keg out on the softball field from the main building to the hand cart. She'd gotten it most of the way to the restaurant wing with no trouble, but there had been a heavy rain earlier in the week, and the cart finally bogged down in a soft spot. Lance's team was up, and Lance was sitting at the end of the bench, waiting for his turn to hit. He saw the girl in the white shorts and blue Warrington's polo shirt struggling with the bogged handcart and got up to help her. 3 weeks later, they were inseparable, and Maddie was pregnant. 10 weeks later, and they were married. 37 months later, Lance DeVore was in a coffin, done with softball and cold beer on a summer evening, done with what he called wood sing, done with fatherhood, done with love for the beautiful princess. Just another early finish. Hold the happily ever after. Bill Dean didn't describe their meeting in any detail. He only said they met at the field. She was running out the beer and he helped her out of the bog hole when she had got her handcart stuck. Maddie never said much about that part of it, so I don't know much. Except I do. And although some of the details might be wrong, I'd bet you $1 to 100 I got most of them right. That was my summer of knowing things I had no business knowing. It's hot for one thing. 94 is the hottest summer of the decade, and July is the hottest month of the summer. President Clinton is being upstaged by Newt and the Republicans. Folks are saying old Slick Willie may not even run for a second term. Boris Yeltsin is reputed to be either dying of heart disease or in a dry out clinic. The Red Sox are looking better than they have any right to. And Derry Joanna Arlen Noonan is maybe starting to feel a little whoopsie in the morning. If so, she does not speak of it to her husband. I see Maddie in her blue polo shirt with her name sewn in white script above her left breast. Her white shorts make a pleasing contrast to her tanned legs. I also see her wearing a blue gimme cap with the letter W for Warrington's above the long bill. Her pretty dark blonde hair is pulled through the hole in the back of the cap and falls to the collar of her shirt. I see her trying to yank the handcart out of the mud without upsetting the keg of beer. Her head is down, the shadow thrown by the bill of the cap obscures all of her face but her mouth and small set chin. Let me help, Lance says, and she looks up. The shadow cast by the cap's bill falls away. He sees her big blue eyes, the ones she'll pass on to her daughter. One look in those eyes and the war is over without a single shot fired. He belongs to her as surely as any young man ever belonged to any young woman. The rest, as they say here, was just courting. The old man had 3 children, but Lance was the only one he seemed to care about. Daughter's crazier in a shithouse mouse, Bill said matter-of-factly. In some laughing academy in California. Think I heard she caught her a cancer, too. The fact that Lance had no interest in computers and software actually seemed to please his father. He had another son who was capable of running the business. In another way, however, Lance DeVore's older half-brother wasn't capable at all. There would be no grandchildren from that one. Rump Wrangler, Bill said. Understand, there's a lot of that going around out there in California. There was a fair amount of it going around on the TR, too, I imagined. But thought it not my place to offer sexual instruction to my caretaker. What? She's probably on the phone with somebody. Give her time. You know what? Let me see. I'll get my voicemail. See if she left a voicemail. You want to see if she left a voicemail? Come here. Let me see if she did.
Seeing as how you hung up on her while she was calling, it probably.
I didn't hang up on her because I didn't know she was. I didn't know she was calling.
Yeah, I asked you who was calling, and you said it was spam.
No, I was on the phone with Matt when it happened.
Yeah, that was shit.
I like this table for all the wrong reasons. You know that they can hear this, right? If I can hear it, your laptop can hear it.
There you go. I don't think they're going to be paying much attention. So, if you want to call Amanda, there's her direct number.
How many people do you have watching right now?
2. And I know them both. All right. Let's go back to where we were. Da 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 da. Do 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 do. Okay. Children, people running the business. Okay. There was a fair amount of it going around on the TR2, I imagined, but that was not my place to offer sexual instruction to my caretaker. Lance DeVore had been attending Reed College in Oregon, majoring in forestry, the kind of guy who falls in love with green flannel pants, red suspenders, and the sight of condors at dawn. A Brothers Grimm woodcutter, in fact, once you get past the academic jargon. In the summer between his junior and senior years, his father had summoned him to the family compound in Palm Springs. Go ahead and hang up. And had presented him with a boxy lawyer's suitcase cramped with maps, aerial photos, and legal papers. These had little order that Lance could see.
You can do to help me enable my phone again.
Not until November. That's the part that sucks.
Yeah, if we wait that long, my phone number is going to be given away.
I'll call them down there. These had little order that Lance could see, but I doubt he had cared. Imagine the comic book collector given a crate crammed with rare old copies of Donald Duck. Imagine a movie collector given the rough cut of a never-released film starring Humphrey Bogart and Marilyn Monroe. Then imagine this avid young forester realizing that his father owned not just acres or square miles in the vast unincorporated forests of western Maine, but entire realms. Although Max DeVore had left the TR in 33, he'd kept a lively interest in the area where he'd grown up, subscribing to area newspapers and getting magazines such as Down East and the Maine Times. In the early 80s, he had begun to buy long columns of land just east of the Maine-New Hampshire border. I thought I was kicking the dog. I was kicking my shoe. God knew that there had been plenty for sale. The paper companies which owned most of it had fallen into the recessionary pit, and many had become convinced that their New England holdings and operations would be the best place to begin retrenching. So this land, stolen from the Indians and clear-cut ruthlessly in the 20s and 50s, came into Max DeVore's hands. He must have bought it just because it was there, a good bargain he could afford to take advantage of. He might have bought it as a way of demonstrating to himself that he had really survived his childhood, and in point of fact, triumphed over it. But he might have bought it as a toy for his beloved younger son. In the years when DeVore was making his major land purchases in western Maine, Lance would have been just a kid, and old enough for a perceptive father to see where his interests were tending. DeVore asked Lance to spend the summer of 94 surveying purchases which were, for the most part, already 10 years old. He wanted the boy to put the paperwork in order. But he wanted more than that. He wanted Lance to make sense of it. It wasn't a land use recommendation he was looking for exactly, although I guess he would have listened if Lance had wanted to make one. He simply wanted a sense of what he had purchased. Would Lance take a summer in western Maine trying to find out what his sense of it was? At a salary of $2,000 or $3,000 a month? I imagine Lance's reply was more polite version of Buddy Jellison's "Does a crow shit in the pine tops?" The kid arrived in the June of '94 and set up shop in a tent on the far side of the Dark Score Lake. He was due back at Reed in late August. Instead, though, he decided to take a year's leave of absence. His father wasn't pleased. His father smelled what he called girl trouble. Yeah, but it's a damn long sniff from California to Maine, Bill Dean said, leaning against the driver's door of his truck with his sunburned arms folded. He had someone a lot closer than Palm Springs doing his sniffing for him. What are you talking about? I asked. About talk. People do it for free, and most are willing to do even more if they're paid. People like Rice Merrill? Rice might be one, he agreed, but he wouldn't be the only one. Times around here don't go between good and bad. If you're a local, they mostly go between bad and worse. So when the guy like Max DeVore sends a guy out with a supply of $50 and $100 bills, was it someone local, a lawyer? Not a lawyer, real estate broker named Richard Osgood. A greasy kind of fella, was Bill Dean's judgment of him, who denned and did business in Moton. Eventually, Osgood had hired a lawyer from Castle Rock. The greasy fella's initial job, when the summer of '94 had ended and Lance DeVore remained on the TR, was to find out what the hell was going on and put a stop to it. And then I asked. Bill glanced at his watch, glanced at the sky, and then centered his gaze on me. He gave a funny little shrug, as if to say, "We're both men of the world," in a quiet and settled sort of way. "You don't need to ask a silly question like that." Then Lance DeVore and Maddie Stanchfield got married in the Grace Baptist Church right up there on Highway 68. There were tales made the rounds about what Osgood must have done to keep it from coming off. I heard he'd tried to bribe Reverend Gooch into refusing to hitch them, and I think that's stupid. They just wanted to have gone someplace. They would have gone someplace else. Besides, I don't see much sense in repeating what I don't know for sure. Bill unfolded an arm and began to tick items off on the leathery fingers of his right hand. They got married in the middle of September '94. I know that. Out popped the thumb. People looked around with some curiosity to see if the groom's father would put in an appearance, but he never did. Out popped the forefinger. Added to the thumb, it made a pistol. Maddie had the baby in April of '95, making the kitty a dite. A dite premature, but not enough to matter. I seen it in the store with my own eyes when it wasn't a week old, and it was just the right size. Out with the second finger. I don't know that Lance's old man absolutely refused to help him financially, but I do know they were living in that trailer down below Dickie's garage, and that makes me think they were having a pretty hard skate. DeVore put on the choke chain, I said. That's what a guy used to getting his own way would do. But if he loved the boy the way you seem to think, he might have come around. Maybe, maybe not. He glanced at his watch again. Let me finish up quick and get out of your sunshine. But you ought to hear one more little story, because it really shows how the land lies. In July of last year, less than a month before he died, Lance DeVore shows up at the post office counter at the Lakeview General. He's got a manila envelope he wants to send, but first he needs to show Carla DeCinces what's inside. She said he was all fluffed out, like daddies sometimes get over their kids when they're small. I nodded, amused at the idea of skinny, stuttery Lance DeVore all fluffed out. But I could see it in my mind's eye, and the image was also sort of sweet. It was a studio picture, he'd gotten taken over in the rock. Showed the kid. What's her name? Kira. Ah, they call him anything these days, don't they? It shows Kira sitting on a big leather chair with a pair of joke spectacles on her little snub of a nose, looking at one of the aerial pictures of the words over across the lake on T100 or T110. Part of what the old man had picked up anyway. Carla said the baby had a surprised look on her face, as if she hadn't suspected there could be so much woods in the whole world. Said it was awful cunning, she did. Cunning as a cat a running, I murmured. And the envelope registered express mail was addressed to Maxwell DeVore in Palm Springs, California, leading you to deduce that the old man either thought enough to ask for a picture of his only grandchild, or that Lance DeVore thought a picture might thaw him. Bill nodded, looking as pleased as a parent whose child had managed a difficult sum. Don't know if it did, he said. Wasn't enough time to tell. Only one way or the other. Lance had bought one of those little satellite dishes, like what you've got here. There was a bad storm the day he put it up. Hail, high wind, blowdowns along the lake shore, tons of lightning. That was along toward evening. Lance put his dish up in the afternoon, all done and safe. Except around the time the storm commenced, he remembered he'd left his socket wrench on the trailer roof. He went up to get it so it wouldn't get all wet and rusty. He got struck by lightning? Jesus, Bill. Lightning struck all right, but it hit across the way. You go past the place where Wasp Hill Road runs into 68, and you'll see the stump of the tree that stroke knocked over. Lance was coming down the ladder with his socket wrench when it hit. If you've never had a lightning bolt tear right over your head, you don't know how scary it is. It's like having a drunk driver veer across into your lane, head right for you, and then swing back into its own side just in time. Close lightning makes your hair stand up, makes your damn prick stand up. It's apt to play the radio on your steel fillings. It makes your ears hum, and it makes the air taste roasted. Lance fell off the ladder. If he had time to think anything before he hit the ground, I bet he thought he was electrocuted. Poor boy. He loved the TR, and it wasn't lucky for him. But it wasn't lucky for him. Broke his neck? Aye, with all the thunder, Maddie never heard him fall or yell or anything. She looked out a minute or two later when it started to hail, and he still wasn't in. And there he was, lying on the ground and looking up into the frightened hail with his eyes open. Bill looked at his watch one final time, then swung the door open to his truck. The old man wouldn't come for their wedding, but he came for the son's funeral, and he's been here ever since. He didn't want nothing to do with that young woman, but he wants the kid, I said. It was no more than what I had already knew, and I felt a sickening in the pit of my stomach just the same. Don't talk about this, Maddie had asked me in the morning of the 4th. It's not good time for Kai and me. How far along in the process has he gotten? On the third turn and heading into the home stretch, I should say. There'll be a hearing in Castle County Supreme Court, maybe later this month, maybe next. The judge could rule then to hand the girl over or put it off until fall. I don't think it matters which, because the one thing that's never going to happen in God's green earth is a ruling in favor of the mother. One way or another, that little girl is going to grow up in California. Put it that way, he gave me a very nasty little chill. Bill slid behind the wheel of his truck. Stay out of it, Mike, he said. Stay away from Maddie DeVore and her daughter. And if you get called into court on account of seeing the two of them on Saturday, smile a lot and say as little as you can. Max DeVore's charging that she's unfit to raise the child. Aye. But I saw the child and she's fine. He grinned again, but this time there was no amusement in it. My mouth's dry. Imagine she is. But that's not the point. Stay clear of their business, old boy. It's my job to tell you that. With Joe gone, I guess I'm the only caretaker you got. He slammed the door of his Ram, started the engine, and reached for the gear shift, then dropped his hand again as something else occurred to him. If you get a chance, you ought to look for the owls. What owls? There's a couple of plastic owls around here someplace. They might be in the basement or out in Joe's studio. They came in by mail order the fall before she passed on. Fall of '93? Aye. That can't be right. We hadn't used Sara in the fall of '93. 'Tis, though. I was down here putting on a storm doors when Joe showed up. We had us a natter, and then the UPS truck came, I lugged the box into the entry and had a coffee. I was still drinking it then, while she took the owls out of the carton and showed 'em off to me. Gory, but they looked real. She left not 10 minutes later. It was like she'd come down to do that errand special, although why anyone would drive all the way from Derry to take delivery of a couple of plastic owls, I don't know. When in the fall was it, Bill? Do you remember? Second week in November, he said promptly. Me and the wife went up to Lewiston late that afternoon to Yvette's sister's. It was her birthday, and on our way back we stopped at the Castle Rock Agway to so Vet could get her Thanksgiving turkey. He looked at me curiously. You really don't know about them owls? No. That's a touch peculiar, wouldn't you say? Maybe she told me and I forgot, I said. I guess it doesn't matter much now in any case. Yet it seemed to matter. It was a small thing, but it seemed to matter. Why would Joe want a couple of plastic owls to begin with? To keep the crows from shitting up in the woodwork like they're doing out on your deck. Crows see those plastic owls, they veer off. I burst out laughing in spite of my puzzlement, or perhaps because of it. Yeah, that really works. I said, yeah, that really works? Aye, long as you move 'em every now and then so the crows don't get suspicious. Crows are just about the smartest birds going, you know. You look at those owls, save yourself a lot of mess. Look for those owls. I will, I said. Plastic owls to scare away crows. To scare the crows away. It was exactly the sort of knowledge Joe would come by. She was like a crow herself in that way, picking up glittery pieces of information that happened to catch her interest, and act upon without bothering to tell me. All at once, I was lonely for her again, missing her like hell. Good. Some day when I've got more time, we'll walk the place all the way around. Woods, too, if you want. I think you'll be satisfied. I'm sure I will. Where's Devore staying? The bushy eyebrow went up. Warrington's. Him and you practically neighbors. I thought you must know. I remembered the woman I'd seen. Black bathing suit, black shorts, somehow combining to give her an exotic cocktail party look, and nodded. I met his wife. Bill laughed heartily enough at that to feel in need of a handkerchief. He fished it off the dashboard, a blue paisley thing the size of a football pennant, and wiped his eyes. What's so funny? I asked. Skinny woman, white hair, face sort of like a kid's Halloween mask? It was my turn to laugh. That's her. She ain't his wife. She's his, what do you call it, personal assistant. Roget Whitmore is her name. He pronounced it Roget, with a hard G. Devore's wives are all dead. The last one, 20 years. What kind of name is Roget? French? California, he said, and shrugged as if the one word explained everything. There's people in town scared of her. Is that so? Aye. Bill hesitated, then added with one more of those smiles we put on when we want others to know that we know we're saying something silly. Brenda Messer says she's a witch, and the two of them have been staying at Warrington's almost a year. Aye. The Whitmore woman comes and goes. Mostly she's been here. Thinking in town is that they'll stay until the custody case is finally finished off. Then all go back to California on Devore's private jet. Leave Osgood to sell Warrington's and sell it? What do you mean sell it? I thought you must know, Bill said, dropping his gear shift into drive. When old Hugh Emerson told Devore they closed the lodge after Thanksgiving, Devore told him he had no intention of moving. Said he was comfortable right where he was and meant to stay put. He bought the place? I had been in turns surprised, amused, and angered over the last 20 minutes, but never exactly dumbfounded. No, 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 no. This is not good. In the last 20 minutes, but never exactly dumbfounded. Now I was. He bought Warrington's Lodge so he wouldn't have to move to Lookout Rock Hotel over in Castle View or rent a house? Aye, so he did. 9 buildings, including the main lodge and the Sunset Bar, 12 acres of woods, a 6-hole golf course, and 500 feet of shorefront on the street, plus a 2-lane bowling alley and a softball field. $4.25 million. His friend Osgood did the deal, and DeVore paid with a personal check. I wonder how he found room for all the zeros. See you, Mike. With that, he backed up the driveway. He put it in drive and backed up the driveway. Really? Leaving me to stand on the stoop, looking after him with my mouth open. Plastic owls. Bill had told me roughly 24 interesting things in between peeks at his watch. But the one which stayed on top of the pile was the fact, and I did accept it as fact. He had been too positive for me not to. That Joe had come down here to take delivery of a couple of plastic goddamn owls. Had she told me? She might have. I don't remember her doing so, and it seemed to me that I would have. And Joe used to claim that when I got in the zone, it was no good to tell me anything. Stuff went in one ear and out the other. Sometimes she'd pin little notes, errands to run, calls to make, to my shirt, as if I were a first grader. But wouldn't I recall if she'd said, deliver I want to receive personally, interested in keeping a lady company? Hell, wouldn't I have gone? I always liked an excuse to go to the TR, except I'd been working on that screenplay, and maybe pushing it a little. Notes pinned to the sleeve of my shirt. If you go out when you're finished, we need milk and orange juice. I inspected what little was left of Joe's vegetable garden, and with the July sun beating down on my neck, and thought about owls, the plastic goddamn owls. Suppose Joe had told me she was coming down here to Sara Laughs. Suppose I had declined, almost without hearing the offer, because I was in the writing zone. Even if you granted those things, there was another question. Why had she felt the need to come down here personally, when she could have just called someone and asked them to meet the delivery truck? Ken Oster would have been happy to do it. Ditto Mrs. M. and Bill Dean, our caretaker, had actually been here. This led to other questions. One was why she hadn't just had UPS deliver the goddamn things to Derry. And finally, I decided I couldn't live without actually seeing a bona fide plastic owl for myself. And maybe, I thought, going back into the house, I'd put one on the roof of my Chevy when it was parked in the driveway. Forestall future bombing runs. I paused in the entry, struck by a sudden idea, and called Ward Hankins, the guy in Waterville who handles my taxes and a few non-writing related business affairs. Mike, he said heartily, how's the lake? The lake's cool and the weather's hot, just the way we like it, I said. Ward, you keep all the records we send you for 5 years, don't you? Just in case the IRS decides to give us some grief? 5 is accepted practice, he said. But I hold your stuff for 7 in the eyes of tax boys. You're a mighty fat pigeon. Better a fat pigeon than a plastic owl, I thought, but didn't say. What I said was, this includes desk calendars, right? Mine and Joe's? Up until she died? You bet. Since neither of you keep diaries, it was the best way to cross-reference receipts and claimed expenses with, could you find Joe's desk calendar for 93 and see what she had going on the second week in November? I'd be happy to. What in particular are you looking for? For a moment I saw myself sitting at the kitchen table in Derry on the first night as a widower, holding up a box with the words Norco pregnancy test, home pregnancy test printed on the side, Exactly what was I looking for at this late date? Considering that I'd loved the lady and she was almost 4 years in her grave, what was I looking for besides trouble, that was? I'm looking for 2 plastic owls, I said. Ward probably thought I was talking to him, but I'm not sure I was. I know that sounds weird, but it's what I'm doing. Can you call me back? Within the hour. Good man, I said, and hung up. Now for the actual owls themselves. Where was the most likely spot to store 2 such interesting artifacts? My eyes went to the cellar door. Elementary, my dear Watson. The cellar stairs were dark and mildly dank. As I stood on the landing groping for the light switch, the door banged shut behind me with such force that I cried out in surprise. There was no breeze, no draught. The day was perfectly still, but the door banged shut just the same. Or was it sucked shut? I stood in the dark at the top of the stairs, feeling for the light switch, smelling the oozy smell that even good concrete foundations get after a while if there is no proper airing out. It was cold, much colder than it had been on the other side of that door. I wasn't alone and I knew it. I was afraid. I'd be a liar if I said I wasn't. But I was also fascinated. Something was with me. Something was in here with me. I dropped my hand away from the wall where the switch was and just stood with my arms at my sides. Some time passed. I don't know how much. My heart was beating furiously in my chest. I could feel it in my temples. It was cold. Hello? I asked. Nothing in response. I could hear the faint, irregular drips of water as condensation fell from one of the pipes down below. I could hear my own breathing, and faintly, far away, whatever that was, I got one ring and they hung up. I could hear my own breathing, and faintly, far away, in another world where the sun was out, I could hear the triumphant caw of crows. Perhaps it had just dropped a load on the hood of my car. I really need an owl, I thought. In fact, I don't know how I ever got along without one. Hello? I asked again. Can you talk? Nothing. I wet my lips. I should have felt silly, perhaps, standing there in the dark and calling to the ghosts, but I didn't, not a bit. The damp had been replaced by the coldness I could feel, and I had company. Oh, yes. Can you tap, then? If you can shut the door, you must be able to tap. I stood there and listened for the soft, isolated drips from the pipes. There was nothing else. I was reaching out for the light switch again when there was a soft thud from not far below me. The cellar of Sara Laughs is high, and the upper 3 feet of it had been insulated with both silver-backed panels of Insagard. The sound that I heard was, I am quite sure, a fist striking against one of them. Just a fist hitting the square of insulation. Not every gut and muscle of my body seemed to come unwound. Oh, so let's back up here a minute. But every gut and muscle of my body seemed to come unwound. My hair stood up, my eye sockets seemed to be expanding, and my eyeballs contracted, as if my head were trying to turn into a skull. Every inch of my skin broke out in gooseflesh. Something was in here with me, very likely something dead. I could no longer have turned on the light if I'd wanted to. I no longer had the strength to raise my arm. I tried to talk, and at last, in a husky whisper I hardly recognized, I asked, Are you really there? Thud. Who are you? I asked, still do no better than the husky whisper. The voice of a man giving last instructions to his family as he lies on his deathbed. This time there was nothing from below. I tried to think, and what came to my struggling mind was Tony Curtis as Harry Houdini in some old movie. According to the film, Houdini had been the Diogenes of the Ouija board circuit, the guy who spent his spare time just looking for an honest medium. He'd attended one seance where the dead communicated by tap once for yes, twice for no, I said. Can you do that? Thud. It was on the stairs below me, but not too far below. 5 down, 6, 7 at most. Not quite close enough to touch if I should reach out and wave my hand in the black basement air. A thing I could imagine. I did not exactly imagine doing. Are you? My voice trailed off. There was simply no strength in my diaphragm. Chilly air lay on my chest like an inflation. I gathered all my will and tried again. Are you Joe? Thud. The soft fist on the insulation, a pause, and then thud, thud. Yes, and then with no idea why I was asking this insane question. Are the owls down here? Thud, thud. Do you know where they are? Thud. Should I look for them? Thud, very hard. Why did she want them? I could ask, but the thing on the stairs had no way to and hot fingers touched my eyes and I almost screamed before realizing it was sweat. I raised my hands in the dark and wiped the heels of them up my face to the hairline. They skidded as if on oil, cold or not. I was all but bathing in my own sweat. Are you Lance DeVore? Thud, thud, at once. Is it safe for me at Sara? Am I safe? Thud, a pause. And I knew it was a pause. That the thing on the stairs wasn't finished, and then thud, thud. Yes, I was safe. No, I wasn't safe. I had regained marginal control of my arm. I reached out, felt along the wall, and found the light switch. I settled my fingers on it. Now the sweat on my face felt as if it was turning to ice. Are you the person who cries at night? Or in the night, I asked. Thud, thud from below me. And between the two thuds, I flicked the light switch. The cellar globes came on. So did the brilliant hanging bulb. At least 125 watts over the landing. There was no time for anyone to hide, let alone get away, and no one there to try either. Also, Mrs. Meserve, admirable in so many ways, had neglected to sweep the cellar stairs. When I went down to where I estimated the thudding sounds had been coming from, I left tracks in the light dust, but mine were the only ones. I blew out breath in front of me and could see it. So it had been cold. Still was cold. But it was warming up fast. I blew out another breath and could see just a hint of fog. A third exhale, and there was nothing. I ran my palm over one of the insulated squares. Smooth. I pushed a finger to it, and although I didn't push with any real force, my finger left a dimple on the silvery surface. Easy as pie. If someone had been thumping a fist down here, this stuff should be pitted. The thin silver skin, perhaps, even broken to reveal the pink fill underneath. But all the squares were smooth. Are you still here? I asked. No response. And yet I had a sense that my visitor was still here, somewhere. This is a long chapter. Oh, okay. So let's see, where's 12 end? Maybe we'll keep going. Not sure. I hope I didn't offend you by turning on the light, I said, and now I did feel slightly odd, standing on my cellar stairs and talking out loud, sermonizing to the spiders. I wanted to see you if I could. I had no idea if that was true or not. So suddenly, I almost lost my balance and tumbled down the stairs. I whirled around, convinced the shrouded creature was behind me, that it had been a thing knocking it. No polite M.R. James ghost, but a horror from around the rim of the universe. There was nothing. I turned around again, took 2 or 3 deep, steadying breaths, and then went the rest of the way down the cellar stairs. Beneath them was a perfectly serviceable canoe, complete with paddle. In the corner was a gas stove we replaced after buying the place. Also the clawfoot tub Joe had wanted, over my objections, to turn into a planter. I found a trunk filled with vaguely recalled table linen, a box of mildewy cassette tapes, groups like the Delphonics, Funkadelic, and 38 Special. Several cartons of old dishes. There was a life down here, but ultimately not a very interesting one. Unlike the life I'd sensed in Joe's studio, this one hadn't been cut short, but evolved out of, shed light shed like old skin, and that was all right. Was, in fact, the natural order of things. There was a photo album on the shelf of knickknacks, and I took it down, both curious and weary. No bombshells this time, however. Nearly all the pics were landscape shots of Sara Laughs, as it had been when we bought it. I found a picture of Jo in bell bottoms, though, her hair parted in the middle and white lipstick on her mouth. And on the Michael Noonan, and one of Michael Noonan wearing a flowered shirt and mutton chop sideburns that made me cringe. The bachelor Mike in the photo was a Barry White kind of guy I didn't want to recognize and yet did. I found Joe's old broken treadmill, a rake I'd want if I was still around here come fall, a snow blower I'd want if even more if I was around come winter, and several cans of paint. What I didn't find was any plastic owls. My insulation thumping friend had been right. Upstairs, the telephone started ringing. I hurried to answer it, going out through the cellar door and then reaching back in to flick off the light switch. Normal behavior to me when I was a kid. And even if it wasn't normal, what did that matter? Or what did it matter? I'd only been back at Sara for 3 days, and already I'm postulated Noonan's first law of eccentricity. When you're on your own, strange behavior really doesn't seem strange at all. I snagged the cordless. Hello? Hi, Mike, it's Ward. Well, that was quick. The file room's just a short walk down the hall, he said. Easy as pie. There's only one thing on Joe's calendar for the second week of November in '93. It says SKs of Maine, Freep, 11 a.m. That's on Tuesday the 16th. Does that help? Yes, I said. Thank you, Ward. It helps a lot. I broke the connection and put the phone back in its cradle. Yes, it helped. SKs of Maine was Soup Kitchens of Maine. Jo had been on their board of directors from '92 until her death. Freep was Freeport. It must have been a board meeting. They had probably discussed plans for feeding the homeless on Thanksgiving, and then Jo had driven the 70 or so miles to the TR in order to take delivery of 2 plastic owls. It didn't answer all the questions, but aren't there always questions in the wake of a loved one's death? And no statute of limitations on when they came up. The UFO voice spoke up again. While you're right here by the phone, it said, why not call Bonnie Ahmedson? Say hi. See how she's doing. Jo had been on 4 different boards during the '90s, all of them doing charitable work. Her friend Bonnie had persuaded her onto the Soup Kitchens board when the seat fell vacant. They had gone to a lot of the meetings together, not the one in November of '93, presumably, and Bonnie could hardly be expected to remember that one particular meeting almost 5 years later. But if she'd saved her old minutes of the meeting sheets, exactly what the fuck was I thinking of? Calling Bonnie making nice, then asking her to check her December '93 minutes. Was I going to ask her if the attendance report had my wife absent from the November meeting? Was I going to ask if maybe Jo had seemed different than that last year of her life? And when Bonnie asked me why I wanted to know, what would I say? Give me that, Jo had snarled in my dream of her. In the dream, she hadn't looked like Jo at all. She looked like some other woman, maybe like the one in the book of Proverbs. The strange woman whose lips were as honey, but whose heart was full of gall and wormwood. A strange woman with fingers as cold as twigs after a frost. Give me that, it's my dust catcher. I went to the cellar door and touched the knob. I turned it and then let it go. I didn't want to look down there into the dark. Didn't want to risk the chance that something might start thumping again. It was better to leave the door shut. What I wanted was something cold to drink. I went into the kitchen, reached for the fridge door, then stopped. The magnets were back in the circle again, and this time 4 letters on one number had been pulled into the center and lined up. They spelled a single lowercase word. Hello. There was something here. Even back in broad daylight, I had no doubt of that. I asked if it was safe for me to be here and had received a mixed message. But that didn't matter. If I left Sara now, there was nowhere to go. I had a key to the house in Derry, but matters had to be resolved here. I knew that. I knew that too. Hello, I said, and opened the fridge to get a soda. Whoever or whatever you are, hello. Chapter 11. I woke in the early hours of the following morning convinced that there was someone in the north bedroom with me. I sat up against the pillows, rubbed my eyes, and saw a dark, shouldery shape standing between me and the window. Who are you? I asked, thinking it wouldn't reply in words. It would instead thump on the wall. Once for yes, twice for no. What's on your mind, Houdini? But the figure standing by the window made no reply at all. I groped up, found the string hanging from the light over the bed, and yanked. My mouth was turned down in a grimace, my midsection tensed so tight it felt as if bullets would have bounced off. "Aw, shit," I said. "Fuck me till I cry." Dangling from the hanger I'd hooked over the curtain rod was my old suede jacket. I'd parked it there while unpacking and had then forgot to store it away in the closet. I tried to laugh but couldn't. At 3 in the morning, it just didn't seem that funny. I turned off the light and lay back down with my eyes open, waiting for Bunter's bell to ring, for the childish sobbing to start. I was still listening when I fell asleep. 7 hours or so later, when I was getting ready to go out to Joe's studio and see if the plastic owls were in the storage area, where I hadn't checked the day before, a late model Ford rolled down my driveway and stopped nose to nose with my Chevy. I had gotten as far as the short path between the house and the studio, but now I came back. The day was hot and breathless, and I was wearing nothing but a pair of cut-off jeans and the plastic flip-flops on my feet. Joe always claimed that the Cleveland style of dressing divided itself naturally into two subgenres, full Cleveland and Cleveland casual. My visitor that Tuesday morning was wearing Cleveland casual. You had your Hawaiian shirt with pineapples and monkeys, your tan slacks from the Banana Republic, your white loafers. Socks are optional, but white footgear is a necessary part of the Cleveland look, as it is at least one piece of gaudy gold jewelry. This fellow was totally okay with the latter department. He had a Rolex on one wrist and a gold link chain on his neck. The tail of his shirt was out, and that there was a suspicious lump on at his back. It was either a gun or a beeper, and looked too big to be a beeper. I glanced at the car again. Black wall tires, and on the dashboard, oh, look at this, a covered blue bubble. The better to creep up on you unsuspected, Grandma. Mike Noonan? He was a handsome in the way that would be attractive to certain women, the kind who cringe when nobody in their immediate vicinity raises their voice, the kind who rarely call the police when things go wrong at home because, on some miserable secret level, they believed they deserved things to go wrong at home. Wrong things that result in black eyes, dislocated elbows, the occasional cigarette burn on the boobie. There was a woman These were women who more often than not call their husbands or lovers daddy, and as in, "Can I bring you a beer, daddy?" or "Did you have a hard day at work, daddy?" "Yes, I'm Mike Noonan. How can I help you?" This version of daddy turned, bent, and grabbed something from the litter of paperwork on the passenger side of the front seat. Beneath the dash, a two-way radio squawked once briefly and fell silent. He turned back to me with a long, buff-colored folder in one hand, held it out. "This is yours." When I didn't take it, he stepped forward and tried to poke it into one of my palms, which would presumably cause me to close my fingers in a kind of reflex. Instead, I raised both hands to shoulder level as if he had just told me to put 'em up, Muggsy. He looked at me patiently, his face as Irish as the Arlen brothers, but without Arlen look of kindness, openness, and curiosity. What was there in place of those things was a species of sour amusement, as if he'd seen all of the world's pisser behavior, most of it twice. Hmm. Blah, 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 blah. One of his eyebrows had been split open a long time ago, and his cheeks had that reddish wind-burned look that indicates either ruddy good health or a deep interest in green alcohol products. He looked like he could knock you into the gutter and then sit on you to keep you there. I'd be good. I've been good. I've been good, Daddy. Get off me. Don't be mean. Don't make this tough. You're going to take service of this, and we both know it. So don't make this tough. Show me some ID first. He sighed, rolled his eyes, and reached into one of his shirt pockets. He brought out a leather folder and opened it and flipped it open. There was a badge and a photo ID. My new friend was George Footman, deputy sheriff, Castle County. The photo was flat and shadowless, like something an assault victim would see in a mug book. Okay, I asked. I took the buff-backed document when he held it out again. He stood there, broadcasting that sense of curdled amusement as I scanned it. I had been subpoenaed to appear in Castle Rock office of Elmer Durgan, attorney at law, at 10 o'clock in the morning on July 10th, 1998. Friday, in other words. Said Elmer Durgan had been appointed guardian and leadum of Kira Elizabeth DeVore, a minor child. He would take the deposition from me concerning any knowledge I might have of Kira Elizabeth DeVore in regard to her well-being. This deposition would be taken on behalf of Castle County Superior Court and Judge Noble Rancourt. A stenographer would be present. I was assumed that this was the court's depot, and nothing to do with the plaintiff or defendant. Footman said, It's my job to remind you of the penalties should you fail. Thanks, but let's just assume you told me all about those, okay? I'll be there. I made shooing gestures at his car. I felt deeply disgusted, and I felt interfered with. I had never been served with the process before, and I didn't care for it. He went back to his car, started to swing in, then stopped with one hairy arm hung over the top of the open door. His Rolex gleamed in the hazy sunlight. Let me give you a piece of advice, he said. And that was enough to tell me anything else I needed to know about the guy. Don't fuck with Mr. DeVore. Or he'll squash you like a bug, I said. Huh? Your actual lines are, let me give you a piece of advice. Don't fuck with Mr. DeVore or he'll squash you like a bug. I could see by his expression, half past perplexed, going on angry, that he had meant to say something very much like that. Obviously, he'd seen the same movies, including all of those in which Robert De Niro plays a psycho. Then his face cleared. Oh, sure, you're a writer, he said. That's what they tell me. You can say stuff like that because you're a writer. Well, it's a free country, isn't it? Ain't you a smartass now? How long have you been working for Max DeVore, deputy? And does the county sheriff's office know you're moonlighting? Oh, they know. It's not a problem. You're the one that might have the problem, Mr. Smartass writer. I decided it was time to quit this before we descended into the cock-a-poopy stage of name-calling. Get out of my driveway, please, deputy. He looked at me a moment longer, obviously searching for that perfect caper line and not finding it. He needed a Mr. Smartass writer to help him. That was all. I'll be looking for you on Friday, he said. Does that mean you're going to buy me lunch? Don't worry. I'm a fairly cheap date. His reddish cheeks darkened a degree further, and I could see what they were going to look like when he was 60. As if 60, if he didn't lay off the fire water in the meantime. He got back into the Ford, reversed up my driveway hard enough to make his tires holler. I stood where I was, watching him go. Once he was headed back out lane 42 to the highway, I went into the house. It occurred to me that Deputy Footman's extracurricular job must pay well, if he can afford a Rolex. On the other hand, maybe it was a knockoff. Settle down, Michael, Joe's voice said. The red rag is gone now. No one's waving anything in front of you, so just settle. I shut her voice out. I didn't want to settle down. I wanted to settle up. I had been interfered with. I walked over to the hall desk where Joe and I had always kept our pending documents and our desk calendars, now that I thought about it, and tacked the summons to the bulletin board by one corner of its buff-colored jacket. With that much accomplished, I raised my fist in front of my eyes, looked at the wedding ring on it for a moment, then slammed it against the wall beside the bookcase. I did it hard enough to make an entire row of paperbacks jump. I thought about Maddie DeVore's baggy shorts and Kmart smock, then about her father-in-law paying $4.25 million for Warringtons, writing a personal goddamn check. I thought about Bill Dean saying that one way or another, that little girl was going to grow up in California. I walked back and forth through the house, still simmering, and finally ended up in front of the fridge. The circle of magnets was the same, but the letters inside had changed. Instead of hello, they now read, "Help our helper," I said, and as soon as I heard the words out loud, I understood. The letters on the fridge consisted of only a single alphabet. Not even, hold on. Ooh. Only a single alphabet. No, not even that. I saw G and X had been lost someplace, and I'd have to get more. If the front of my Kenmore was going to become a Ouija board, I needed a good supply of letters, especially vowels. In the meantime, I moved the H and the E in front of the R. Now the message read, LP her. I scattered the circle of fruit and vegetable magnets with my palm, spread the letters, and resumed pacing. I had made a decision not to get between DeVore and his daughter-in-law, but I wound up between them anyway. A deputy in Cleveland clothing had shown up in my driveway, complicating a life that already had its problems, and scaring me a little in the bargain. But at least it was a fear of something I could see and understand. All at once I decided I wanted to do more with the summer than worry about ghosts, crying kids, and what my wife had been up to 4 or 5 years ago, if in fact she had been up to anything. I couldn't write books, but that didn't mean I couldn't pick scabs. Help her. I decided I would try at least. Harold Oblonsky Literary Agency. Come to Belize with me, Nola, I said. I need you. We'll make beautiful love at midnight when the full moon turns the beach to the bone. Hello, Mr. Noonan, she said. No sense of humor had Nola. No sense of romance either. In some ways, that made her perfect for the Oblonsky Agency. Would you like to speak to Harold? If he's in. He is. Please hold. One nice thing about being a best-selling author, even one whose books only appear as a general rule on the lists that go to 15, is that your agent almost always happens to be in. Another is if he's vacationing in Nantucket, he'll be into you there. A third is that the time you spend on hold is usually quite short. Mike, he cried, how's the lake? I thought about you all weekend. Yeah, I thought, and pigs will whistle. Things are fine in general, and shitty in one particular. In one particular, Harold, I need to talk to a lawyer. I thought first about calling Ward Hankins for a recommendation, but then I decided I wanted somebody a little more high power than Ward was likely to know. Someone with filed teeth and a taste for human flesh would be nice. This time Harold didn't bother with the pause between routine. What's up, Mike? Are you in trouble? Thump once for yes and twice for no, I thought, and for one wild moment thought of actually doing just that. I remembered finishing Christy Brown's memoir, Down All the Days, and wondering what it would be like to write an entire book with the pen grasped between the toes of your left foot. Now I wondered what it would be like to go through eternity with no way to communicate but rapping on a cellar wall. And even then, only certain people would be able to hear and understand you, and only those certain people at certain times. Joe, was it you? And if it was, why did you answer both ways? Mike, are you there? Yes, this isn't really my trouble, Harold. So cool your jets. I do have a problem, though. Your main guy is Gold Acre, right? Right. I'll call him right, but he deals primarily with contracts law. I'm looking out. I was thinking out loud now, and when I paused, Harold didn't fill in. Sometimes he's an all right guy, most times really. Call him for me anyway, would you? Tell him I need to talk to an attorney with a good working knowledge of child custody law. Have him put me in touch with the best one who's free to take a case immediately. One who can be in court with me Friday if that's necessary. Is it paternity? He asked, sounding both respectful and afraid. No, custody. I thought about telling him to get the whole story from the lawyer to be named later, but Harold deserved better and would demand to hear my version sooner or later anyway, no matter what the lawyer told him. I gave him an account of the 4th of July morning and its aftermath. I struck I stuck with the divorce, mentioning nothing about voices, crying children, or thumps in the dark. Harold only interrupted once, and that was when he realized who the villain of the piece was. You're asking for trouble, he said. You know that, don't you? I'm in for a certain measure of it in any case, I said. I've decided I want to dish out a little as well, that's all. You will not have the peace and quiet that the writers need to do his best work. Harold said in an amusingly prime voice. I wondered what the reaction would be if I said that was okay. I hadn't written anything more riveting than a grocery list since Joe died, and maybe this would me up a little, but I didn't. Never let 'em see you sweat, the Noonan clan's motto. Someone could carve, "Don't worry, I'm fine," on the door of the family's crypt. Then I thought, help her. That young woman needs a friend, I said, and Joe would have wanted me to be one to her. Joe didn't like it when the little folks got stepped on. You think? Yeah. Okay, I'll see who I can find. And Mike, do you want me to come up on Friday for this depot? No, I came out sounding needlessly abrupt, and this felt and was followed by a silence that seemed not calculated but hurt. Listen, Harold, my caretaker said the actual custody hearing is scheduled soon. If it happens and you still want to come up, I'll give you a call. I can always use your moral support. You know that. In my case, it's immoral support, he replied, but he sounded cheery again. We said goodbye. I walked back to the fridge and looked at the magnets. They were still scattered hell to breakfast, and that was sort of a relief. Even the spirits must have to rest sometimes. I took the cordless phone, went out onto the deck, and plonked down in the chair where I had been the night of the 4th when Devore called. Devore had called me a liar. I had told him to stick my telephone number up his ass. We were off to a great start as neighbors. I pulled the chair a little closer to the edge of the deck, which dropped a giddy 40 feet or so to the slop between Sarah's backside and the lake. I looked at the green woman I'd seen while swimming, telling myself not to be a dope. Things like that you can see only from one angle. Stand another 10 feet off one side or the other, and there's nothing to look at. But this was apparently a case of the exceptions proving the rule. I was both amused and a little uneasy to realize that the birch down there by the street looked like a woman from the lakeside as well as from the lake. Some of it was due to the pine just behind it, that bare branch jutting off to the north like a bony pointing arm. But not all of it. From back here, the birch's white limbs and narrow leaves still made the woman's shape, and when the wind shook the lower levels of the tree, the green and silver swirled like long skirts. I had said no to Harold's well-meant offer to come up almost before it was fully articulated, and as I looked at the tree woman, rather ghastly in her own right, I knew why. Harold was loud. Harold was insensitive to nuance. Harold might frighten off whatever was here. I didn't want that. I was scared, yes, standing on those dark cellar stairs and listening to the thumps from just below me. I had been fucking terrified. but I had also felt fully alive for the first time in years. I was touching something in Sara that was entirely beyond my experience, and it fascinated me. The cordless phone rang in my lap, making me jump. I grabbed it, expecting Max DeVore or perhaps Footman, his over golded minion. It turned out to be a lawyer named John Storrow, who sounded as if he might have graduated from law school fairly recently, like last week. Still, he worked for the firm of Avery, McLaw, Lane, and Bernstein on Park Avenue, and Park Avenue is a pretty good address for a lawyer, even one who still has a few of his milk teeth. If Harry Goldacre said Storrow was good, he probably was, and his specialty was custody law. "And tell me what's happening up there," he said, when the introductions were over and the background had been sketched in. I did my best, feeling my spirits rise a little as the tale wound on. There's something oddly comforting about telling a legal guy once a billable hours clock has started running. You have passed the magical point at which a lawyer becomes your lawyer. Your lawyer is warm, your lawyer is sympathetic, your lawyer makes notes on a yellow pad and nods in all the right places. Most of the questions your lawyer asks are questions you can answer. And if you can't, your lawyer will help you find a way to do so, by God. Your lawyer is always on your side. Your enemies are his enemies. To him, you are never shit, but always Shinola. When I had finished, John Storrow said, "Wow, I'm surprised the papers haven't gotten a hold of this." That never occurred to me, but I could see his point. The DeVore family saga wasn't for the family New York. Oh my God. Let's try this again. The DeVore family saga wasn't for the New York Times or Boston Globe, probably not even for the Daily News. But in weekly supermarket tabs like the National Enquirer or Inside View, it would fit like a glove. Instead of the girl, King Kong decides to snatch girl's innocent child and carry it with him to the top of the Empire State Building. "Oh, eek, unhand that baby, you brute." It wasn't front page stuff. No blood or celebrity morgue shots. But as a page 9 shouter, it would do nicely. In my mind, I composed a headline blaring from over side-to-side pics of Warrington's Lodge and Maddie's rusty double-wide. "Compu-King lives in splendor as he tries to take young beauty's only child." Probably too long. I decided. I wasn't writing anymore, and still I needed an editor. That was pretty sad when you stop to think about it. "Perhaps at some point we'll see that they do get the story," Storrow said in a musing tone. I realized that this was a man I could grow attached to, at least in my present angry mood. He grew brisker. "Who am I representing here, Mr. Noonan? You, the young lady, or the young lady? I vote for the young lady. The young lady doesn't even know I've called you. She may think I've taken a bit too much on myself. She may, in fact, give me the rough side of her tongue. Why would she do that? Because she's a Yankee, a Maine Yankee, the worst kind. On a given day, you can make the Irish look logical. Perhaps, but she's the one with the target pinned to her shirt. I suggest that you call and tell her that." I promised I would. It wasn't a hard promise to make, either. I'd known I'd have to be in touch with her ever since I had accepted the summons from Deputy Footman. "And who stands for Mike Noonan come Friday morning?" Sorrel laughed dryly. "I'll find someone local to do that. He'll go in this Durgan's office with you, sit quietly with his briefcase on his lap and listen. I may be in town by that point. I don't know until I talk to Mrs. DeVore. But I won't be in Durgan's office. When the custody hearing comes around, though, you'll see my face in that place." "All right, good. Call me with the name of the new lawyer. My other new lawyer." "Uh-huh. In the meantime, talk to the young lady. Get me a job. I'll try. Also, try to stay visible if you're with her," he said. "If we give the bad guys room to get nasty, they'll get nasty. There's nothing like that between you, is there?" Nothing nasty? Sorry to ask, but I do have to ask. No, I said. It's been quite some time since I've been up to anything nasty with anyone. I'm tempted to commiserate, Mr. Noonan, but under the circumstances, Mike, make it Mike. Good, I like that. And I'm John. People are going to talk about your involvement anyway. You know that, don't you? Sure. People know I can afford you. They'll speculate about how she can afford me. Pretty young widow, middle-aged widower. Sex would seem most likely. You're a realist. I don't really think I am, but I know a hawk from a handsaw. I hope you do, because the ride could get rough. This is extremely rich man we're going up against. Yeah, he didn't sound scared. He sounded almost greedy. He sounded the way part of me had felt when I saw that the magnets on the fridge were back in a circle. I know he is. In court, you won't matter a whole hell of a lot, because there's a certain amount of money on the other side. Also, the judge is going to be very aware that this one is a powder keg. That can be useful. What's the best thing we've got going for us? I asked, this thinking of Kira's rosy, unmarked face and her complete lack of fear in the presence of her mother. I asked it, thinking John would reply that the charges were clearly unfounded. I'd thought wrong. The best thing? Devore's age. He's got to be older than God. Based on what I've heard over the weekend, I think he might be 85. That would make God older. Yeah, but as a potential dad, he makes Tony Randall look like a teenager, John said, and now he sounded positively gloating. Think of it, Michael. The kid graduates from high school the year Gramps turns 100. Oh, also there's a chance the old man's overreached himself. Do you know what the guardian ad litem is? No. Essentially, it's a lawyer the court appoints to protect the interest of the child. A fee for the service comes out of the court costs, but it's a pittance. Most people do agree to serve as guardian ad litem, have strictly altruistic motives, but not all of them. In any case, the ad litem puts his own spin on the case. Judges don't have to take the guy's advice, but they most always do. It makes the judge look stupid to reject the advice of his own appointee. And the thing the judge hates above all others is looking stupid. Devore will have his own lawyer. John laughed. How about a half a dozen at the actual custody hearing? Are you serious? The guy's 85. That's too old for Ferraris, too old for bungee jumping in Tibet, too old for horse unless he's a mighty man. What does that leave for him to spend his money on? Lawyers, I said bleakly. Yep. And Maddie DeVore? What does she get? Thanks to you, she gets me, John Storrow said. It's like a Grisham novel, isn't it? Pure gold. Meantime, I'm interested in Durgan, the ad litem. If Devore hasn't been expecting any real trouble, he may have been unwise enough to put temptation in Durgan's way. And Durgan may have been stupid enough to succumb. Hey, who knows what we might find? Then I was a turn back. She gets you, I said, thanks to me. And if it wasn't here to stick in my oar, what would she get then? Bubkiss. That's Yiddish. It means, I know what it means. That's incredible. Nope, just American justice. You know the lady with the scales? The one who stands outside most city courthouses? Uh-huh. Slap some handcuffs on the broad's wrists and some tape over her mouth to go along with the blindfold, rape her, and roll her in the mud. You like that image? I don't. But it's a fair representation of how the law works in custody cases where the plaintiff is rich and the defendant is poor. And sexual equality has actually made it worse. Because while mothers still tend to be poor, they are no longer seen as the automatic choice for custody. Maddie Devore's got to have you, doesn't she? Yes, John said simply. Call me tomorrow and tell me that she will. I hope I can do that. So do I. And listen, there's one more thing. What? You lied to Devore on the telephone. Bullshit! Nope. I hate to contradict my sister's favorite author, but you did, and you know it. You told Devore that the mother and child were out together. The kid was picking flowers. Everything was fine. You put everything in there except Bambi and Thumper. I was sitting up straight at my desk chair now. I felt sandbagged. I also felt that my own cleverness had been overlooked. Hey, no, think again. I never came out and said anything. I told him I assumed. I used the word more than once. I remember that very clearly. Uh-huh. And if he was taping your conversation, you'll get a chance to actually count how many times you used it. At first, I didn't answer. I was thinking back at the conversation I'd had with him, remembering the underhum on the phone line, the characteristic underhum I remembered from all my previous summers at Sara Laughs. Had that steady, low, been even more noticeable on Saturday night? I guess maybe there could be a tape, I said reluctantly. Uh-huh. And if Devore's lawyers get it to the ad litem, how do you think you'll sound? Careful, I said. Maybe like a man with something to hide? Or a man spinning yarns. And you're good at that, aren't you? After all, it's what you do for a living. At the custody hearing, Devore's lawyer is apt to mention that. If he then produces one of the people who passed you shortly after Maddie arrived on the scene, a person who testifies that the young lady seemed upset and flustered, how do you think she'll sound then? You'll sound then like a liar, I said, and then, fuck. Fear not, Mike. Be of good cheer. What should I do? Spike your guns before they fire them. Tell Durgan exactly what happened. Get it in the depot. Emphasize the fact that the little girl thought she was walking safely. Make sure you get in that crossmuck thing. I love that. Then if they have the tape, they'll play it, and I'll look like a story-changing smuck. I don't think so. You weren't a sworn witness when you talked to Devore, were you? There you were, sitting on your deck and minding your own business, watching the fireworks show. Out of the blue, this grouchy old asshole calls you, starts ranting. Didn't even give him your number, did you? Nope. Your unlisted number? Nope. And when he said he was Maxwell Devore, he could have been anyone, right? Right. He could have been the Shah of Iran. Nah, the Shah's dead. The Shah's out then. But he could have been a nosy neighbor or a prankster, yes. And you said what you said with all of those possibilities in mind. But now that you're part of the official court proceeding, you're telling the whole truth and nothing but. You bet. That good my lawyer feeling had deserted me for a bit, but it was back full force now. You can't do better than the truth, Mike, he said solemnly, except maybe in a few cases, and this isn't one. Are we clear on that? Yes. All right, we're done. I want to hear from you, or either you or Maddie, around 11ish tomorrow. It ought to be her. I'll try. If she really balks, you know what to do, don't you? I think so. Thanks, John. One way or another, we'll talk very soon, he said, and hung up. I sat where I was for a while. Once I pushed the button which opened the line on the cordless phone and pushed it again to close it. I had to talk to Maddie, but I wasn't quite ready yet. I decided to take a walk instead. If she really balks, you know what to do, don't you? Of course, remind her that she couldn't afford to be proud. That she couldn't afford to do all Yankee refusing charity from Mike Noonan, author of Big Two, The Red Shirt Man, and the soon-to-be published Helen's Promise. Remind her that she could have her pride and her daughter, but likely not both. Hey, Maddie, pick one. I walked almost to the end of the lane, stopping at Tidwell's Meadow, with its pretty view down to the cup of the lake and across to the White Mountains. The water dreamed under a hazy sky, looking gray when you tipped your head one way, blue when you tipped it the other. That sense of mystery was very much with me. That sense of Manderley. Over 40 black men had settled here at the turn of the century. Lit here for a while, anyway, according to Marie Hangerman, also according to a History of Castle County and Castle Rock, a weighty tome published in 1977, the county's bicentennial year. Pretty special black people, too. most of them related, most of them talented, and most of them part of a musical group which had first been called the Red Top Boys, and then Sarah Tidwell and the Black Top Boys. They had bought the meadow and a good-sized tract of lakeside land from the man named Douglas Day. The money had been saved up over a period of 10 years, according to Sonny Tidwell, who did the dickering. As a red top, son Tidwell had played what was then known as chicken scratch guitar. There had been a vast uproar about it in town, and even a meeting to protest. The advent of these darkies, which came in the horde, things had settled down and turned out okay, as things have a way of doing, more often than not. The shanty town most locals had expected on Day's Hill, for so Tidwell's Meadow was called in 1900, when son Tidwell bought the land on behalf of his extensive clan, had never appeared. Instead, a number of neat white cabins sprang up, surrounding a larger building that might have been intended as a group meeting place, a rehearsal area, or perhaps at some point a performance hall. Sarah and the Red Top Boys, sometimes there was a Red Top girl in there as well. Membership in the band was fluid, changing with every performance. Played around Western Maine for over a year, maybe closer to 2 years, in towns all up and down the western line: Farmington, Skowhagen, Bridgeton, Gates Falls, Castle Rock, Monton, and Fryeburg. You'll still come across their show posters at barn bazaars and junkatoriums. Sarah and the Red Tops were great favorites on the circuit, and they got along all right at home on the TR, too, which never surprised me. At the end of the day, Robert Frost, that utilitarian and often unpleasant poet, was right. In the Northern Three, we really do believe that good fences make good neighbors. We squawk and then keep a miserly place, a kind with gimlet eyes and a tucked down mouth. They pay their bills, we say. I ain't never had to shoot a dog. They pay their bills, we say. I ain't never had to shoot one of their dogs, we say. They keep themselves to themselves, we say, as if isolation were a virtue. But of course, the defining virtue, they don't take charity. At some point, Sara Tidwell became Sara Laughs. In the end, though, TR90 mustn't have been what they wanted, because after playing a county fair or two in the late summer of 01, the clan moved on. Their neat little cabins provided summer rental income for the Day family until 33, when they burned in the summer fires, which charred the east and north sides of the lake. End of story. Except for her music, her music had lived. I got up from the rock I had been sitting on, stretched my arms and back, and walked back down the lane, singing one of her songs as I went. Is your dad still in his room? Hey, babe, I just now saw you. What's up? All right, we're going to stop there. I have a few things I need to get done. I didn't see him come down. I only heard Tristan, and then boom, there he was. So we're going to stop there. We will do 12 and 13 tonight. So I would read more, but I do. Talk to you guys soon. Hopefully you will enjoy that. Hopefully you enjoyed that chapter. I'm going to get you guys the link to the Discord anyway. I just keep giving it to you so that you guys have it. Give me a second. I'm bringing up my Discord. All right, let's see. Pull an invite. Boop. Copy. And paste. There you go. So you guys have the Discord link if you want to join and talk about it, whatever. But yeah, do you need me to do anything? Because I was going to stop reading if you did. If not, I can read another chapter. They're all chocolate banana. You okay? You want me to stop reading? Yeah, I'm going to stop for now. I will come back later on, probably more toward like this evening. But if I get the chance, I will come back earlier. So thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it. I appreciate y'all following me. I appreciate y'all being here listening. And I just appreciate y'all. Follow if you want. If not, I'm here twice a day. At least I try to be, unless I'm sick. So I will talk to you guys later. I love y'all. Have a good day.